Back in the 1990s, walking into a Red Lobster felt like entering a special occasion. Families lined up outside, giant plates of seafood covered the tables, and those famous cheddar biscuits seemed almost impossible to stop eating. For millions of Americans, this place was not just a restaurant, it was a tradition, a celebration, a memory. But today, the same company that once dominated casual dining is fighting for survival. Stores are closing, debts exploded, and customers started asking one simple question. How did one of America's most iconic restaurant chains fall so hard? The story of Red Lobster is honestly one of the most fascinating rise and fall stories in modern business. Because for decades, the company did almost everything right. They understood middle-class America better than most brands. They made seafood feel affordable, exciting, and even luxurious. And for a while, it worked better than anyone could have imagined. But things did not stay that way, not even close. To understand what went wrong, you have to go all the way back to 1968, when a man named Bill Darden opened the first Red Lobster in Lakeland. Now this was a bold move, because at the time, seafood restaurants were not exactly booming across suburban America. Seafood was seen as expensive, risky, and something many families only ate near the coast. But Darden saw an opportunity that others completely missed. He believed average American families wanted a casual place where they could enjoy seafood without feeling intimidated, and more importantly, without spending a fortune. That idea sounds simple today, but back then it was revolutionary. The first restaurant became successful almost immediately. People loved the atmosphere, they loved the huge portions, and they loved the idea that they could enjoy lobster, shrimp, and crab without going to some fancy high-end restaurant. Soon, the company expanded rapidly across the United States, and in 1970, only 2 years after opening, Red Lobster was acquired by General Mills. Yes, the cereal company. At first, that sounds strange. But General Mills had started building a restaurant empire, and Red Lobster became one of its most valuable assets. The company poured money into expansion, marketing, and operations. And suddenly, Red Lobster was everywhere. This is where the first major rise truly began. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Red Lobster exploded in popularity. Americans were becoming wealthier, suburbs were growing fast, and casual dining chains became part of American culture. Families loved going out to eat together, and Red Lobster perfectly matched the moment. The restaurants had a warm nautical theme. The menus felt exciting, and the prices were still affordable enough for middle-class families. It was not luxury dining, but it felt close enough. And then there were the ads. Red Lobster became incredibly good at marketing. Commercials made seafood feel fun, fresh, and almost magical. People associated the brand with birthdays, anniversaries, and family dinners. For many customers, going there felt like an event. By the 1990s, the company had become a giant. At one point, Red Lobster was the largest seafood restaurant chain in the world, making billions of dollars annually. And for a while, it looked unstoppable. But this is where something interesting started happening. Success can sometimes hide problems. When a company grows too big, it can slowly stop paying attention to changes happening around it. And that is exactly what happened here. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, American dining habits started changing. Customers wanted healthier food, faster service, and newer experiences. Younger consumers were becoming less interested in giant chain restaurants. Suddenly, the old formula was not working as perfectly as before. At the same time, seafood prices became more unpredictable, fuel costs increased, and competition exploded everywhere. Chains like Olive Garden, Applebee's, and Chili's were all fighting for the same customers, and newer fast casual brands were starting to attract younger audiences. Red Lobster still made money, but the momentum was slowing down. Then came another major shift. In 1995, General Mills spun off its restaurant division into a separate company called Darden Restaurants. Named after founder Bill Darden, Red Lobster became part of this larger restaurant group alongside Olive Garden and other chains. For a while, things remained stable, But internally, problems were growing. Some customers felt the restaurants were becoming outdated. Others complained the menus felt too heavy, too repetitive, or too expensive. And maintaining seafood quality across hundreds of locations was becoming increasingly difficult. Still, the brand had something incredibly powerful: nostalgia. People grew up with Red Lobster, and nostalgia can keep a company alive for years longer than expected. But nostalgia alone cannot solve operational problems. Then came the financial crisis of 2008, and this is where everything changed. When the economy crashed, millions of Americans stopped spending money on casual dining, families cut back on restaurant visits, and suddenly Red Lobster found itself in a dangerous position. Seafood was expensive, operating costs were rising, and customers were becoming more price-sensitive. The company tried promotions, discounts, and endless menu experiments. But many of these decisions actually hurt the brand further. One of the biggest issues was identity. What exactly was Red Lobster supposed to be anymore? Was it affordable family dining? Was it premium seafood? Was it casual comfort food? The company seemed unsure, and customers noticed. Meanwhile, competitors adapted faster. Fast casual chains offered quicker meals, trendier environments, and healthier options, while Red Lobster still felt stuck in another era. Then came one of the most controversial decisions in the company's history. In 2014, Darden Restaurants decided to sell Red Lobster to a private equity firm called Golden Gate Capital for about $2.1 billion. At the time, many investors believed Red Lobster was dragging Darden down, and Darden wanted to focus more heavily on Olive Garden. But critics immediately warned that the deal could become a disaster. And honestly, looking back now, those warnings seem almost prophetic. Private equity firms are often focused on squeezing as much profit as possible from businesses. And one particular decision became infamous. Golden Gate Capital sold the land underneath many Red Lobster restaurants and then leased it back to the company. Now, if you are wondering why that matters, here is the problem. Owning restaurant property can provide stability, but leasing those same properties means ongoing rent expenses. Suddenly, Red Lobster had massive lease obligations, weighing it down every single month. Many analysts later argued this move severely weakened the company financially, and the timing could not have been worse, because customer tastes were still changing rapidly. People wanted fresher concepts, delivery services exploded, and social media started shaping food culture in completely new ways. Red Lobster tried to adapt. They introduced new menus and leaned heavily into promotions. And then came the biscuits. Those Cheddar Bay biscuits became almost bigger than the brand itself. People loved them so much that grocery stores eventually started selling biscuit mixes. Memes about the biscuits spread online. And for some customers, the biscuits were literally the main reason to visit. That sounds funny, but it also revealed something deeper. When the side dish becomes more famous than the restaurant, it may signal a larger identity problem. Still, despite the struggles, the company survived longer than many expected. Then came 2020. The pandemic hit the restaurant industry like a wrecking ball. Dining rooms closed across America. Thousands of restaurants struggled to survive. And seafood chains faced even greater pressure because of high supply costs. For Red Lobster, the situation became extremely difficult. The company leaned heavily into takeout and delivery, but seafood is not always ideal for long delivery times. And even when customers returned, many dining habits had permanently changed. Labor shortages increased costs even more. Inflation hit food prices hard, and debt continued piling up. But what happened next was shocking. In 2023, Red Lobster launched a major promotion centered around endless shrimp. Now on paper it sounded like classic Red Lobster marketing: give customers a fun deal and drive traffic into restaurants. Instead, it became a financial nightmare. Customers ordered enormous amounts of shrimp. The company reportedly underestimated demand, and losses piled up quickly. Some reports claimed the promotion cost the company millions of dollars. Imagine being a struggling restaurant chain already drowning in debt, and then accidentally creating one of the most expensive promotions in company history. It almost sounds unbelievable. And honestly, this became symbolic of the company's broader issues. Decisions felt reactive instead of strategic. Leadership changes created instability, and the company struggled to find a clear direction. Then, in 2024, the news many people feared finally arrived. Red Lobster filed for bankruptcy protection. For longtime customers, it felt surreal. An American icon that had existed for more than 5 decades was suddenly collapsing in public view. Restaurants closed across the country. Employees lost jobs. Auctions were held for restaurant equipment, and videos of abandoned locations started spreading online. It felt like watching a piece of American dining culture disappear in real time. But here's the interesting thing about Red Lobster. Even after all the failures, the brand still has emotional power. People still talk about their childhood memories there. They still joke about the biscuits. And many customers genuinely want the company to survive. That kind of emotional connection is incredibly rare. And this is where the story becomes more complicated than a simple rise and fall. Because even today, there are still attempts to save the company. New leadership teams have promised restructuring efforts, menu changes, and operational improvements. The brand is trying to modernize while still keeping the nostalgia that made it famous in the first place. Whether that works or not is another question entirely. The restaurant industry today is brutal. Consumers have endless options. Delivery apps changed everything. Food trends move faster than ever. And younger generations often prefer experiences that feel unique rather than giant national chains. That does not mean recovery is impossible, but it does mean companies like Red Lobster face an uphill battle, unlike anything they dealt with during their golden years. And maybe the most fascinating part of this entire story is how slowly the decline happened. This was not one single mistake. It was years of changing customer habits, expensive real estate decisions, identity confusion, rising costs, weak leadership moments, and an industry transforming faster than the company could adapt. In many ways, Red Lobster became trapped between two worlds. Too expensive to compete with fast food, but not modern enough to compete with trendier restaurants. Too nostalgic to completely reinvent itself, but too outdated to stay exactly the same. And honestly, you could argue this is happening to many old restaurant chains right now. Brands that once dominated America are suddenly struggling to stay relevant in a world where attention spans are shorter. Trends change overnight, and customers expect constant innovation. Still, there is something oddly emotional about Red Lobster's story, maybe because so many people have memories tied to it. Birthday dinners, graduation celebrations, road trips, family nights, all connected to this one restaurant chain. That emotional connection is why people still care. And maybe that is also why the fall feels so dramatic. Because when iconic brands collapse, it reminds people that even the biggest companies are not invincible. One generation can build something legendary, and another generation can slowly watch it disappear. But maybe the biggest lesson here is this. Success can make companies comfortable, and comfort can quietly become dangerous. Red Lobster spent decades on top, but the world around it kept changing. Customers changed, technology changed, culture changed, and eventually, the company struggled to keep up. The really shocking part is that many warning signs were visible for years. But fixing large companies is much harder than most people realize, especially when debt, investors, leadership pressure, and changing markets all collide at the same time. So now the question becomes, can Red Lobster actually survive this crisis and reinvent itself for a new generation? Or is this the final chapter for one of America's most famous restaurant chains? Because sometimes companies fall and disappear forever, but sometimes, against all odds, they find a way back. And honestly, that uncertainty is what makes this story so fascinating. What do you think? Can Red Lobster make a real comeback? Or do you think the golden days are already over? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.